You're listening to Not Just Lashes. Here are your hosts, Shannique and Dixie.
Hello. Welcome back to Not Just Lashes. I'm Shannique.
And I'm Dixie.
And today we're going to learn about how to set boundaries in the workplace. And today we have Homeyra, and she is a self-esteem and empowerment coach. Yay, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we're going to learn about self-esteem.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, I'm excited too. There's moments where I even had him this morning where I was talking to clients, and I'm like, how do I handle this?
Yeah, for sure. So, what are boundaries?
Boundaries, if you look it up on Google or if you talk to most people, most experts will call it an invisible line that would basically keep some people out and some people in. So that's the most common, I would say, definition.
Okay.
For me, however, working with a lot of clients over the years, especially trauma survivors, I'm noticing that they kind of mistake boundaries with a wall. They want to feel safe, so they hide behind the wall, and to them that wall is the boundary. So from my experience with a lot of clients, I have come to my own definition, which I see boundaries as like a screen door where you can see outside, the air can come in, the bugs stay out, the breeze comes in, and you can see who's coming, who's going. You decide if you want to let them in or not. So to me, it's different where you still feel secure because there's a barrier, but also it's not like a wall where you cannot see what's happening. You're not as isolated. So that's how I...
That's
really good because sometimes, a wall is tough. A wall doesn't move, it doesn't budge. So there's a difference between letting the breeze in and having that wall up where you're just stuck.
Yes. And, it feels safe behind the wall, of course, especially after experiencing trauma, but it's also very lonely. And we don't get to grow. We stay, inside our comfort zone. So we don't want to look at boundaries as a wall.
Yeah.
No, but that makes sense. But like you're saying, like boundaries are important though. And that goes along with safety, right? Like I know, like if you were to take that analogy, if I'm in my house, I feel safe with my door, my screen door, because nothing's getting in that I don't want or inviting in.
You can see also, right? You can see what's happening a little bit. So you have some access to the outside the boundary. You have some access, you have some visibility.
So what is specifically boundaries in the workplace?
It's the same concept you can apply to workplace as well. So I think with boundaries, it's important that first we're aware of our own boundaries, what they are, and we set them according to our values. And then we have to learn how to express them. And that can apply to workplace or any other place. First, we need to know what our boundaries are and then set them and express them and have a conversation about them if somebody crosses them. But many times what happens again when there's poor self-esteem is like we don't know what our own values are. We don't know what our own needs are because we're used to taking care of somebody else's needs a lot of times, especially if there's history of childhood trauma or maybe a toxic relationship. We always take care of the other person's needs for safety reasons, so we forget what our own boundaries are. So it's really important that we get to know ourselves, our own values, and based on those, our own needs, and based on those, we set boundaries and express them to the other person.
Yeah. Because we're in the service industry. I mean, that's like when you explain the taking care of people and making them feel like that's part of what we do. Like, that's why we joke and we're like, it's not just lashes. Like, it's not about the lashes. It's about the experience and what
Emotion
we're bringing
and
to people, the confidence and the joy and beauty that it brings.
Yes.
But it's like, you got to take care of yourself first.
Yes. It's important that we take care of ourselves, I'm sure everybody has heard the example, when you're on a plane, you want to make sure that put the mask on yourself, the oxygen mask, and then take care of the other person. Because we need to show up with our clients in a way that we're fresh and they pick up on our stress vibes, or they pick up on our resentment too, consciously or unconsciously. They pick up on it.
It's so true.
So it's important that we give them from a full cup.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Like, how do you go through and be like, what are my boundaries? What are my values? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are exercises that you can do. I'm sure there are workbooks out there that you can look for, but also just, sitting quiet for a little bit. Just, what are my business goals? What is it that I want to accomplish? How do I want to show up with my clients? Kind of like become very clear as to how you want to show up at work and what needs to happen in order for me to provide that for my clients. And does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And so based on that, you can decide, okay, this is what I need for myself. This is what I need for my business. This is what I would like to do for my clients. This is the type of service I want to provide for them. And when I put all of that together, then I know I kind of like have a map as to how am I going to show up and what is it that I'm willing to accept or not willing to accept from a client, from a vendor, from my team.
Yeah. What do you think makes it difficult for people to set boundaries? Like, what are the reasons?
I think, sometimes we want to be very aware that there are situations that it's almost impossible to set boundaries. So we want to be aware of that and have compassion for individuals in those situations. For example, if you're in a violent type of relationship, or if you have an abusive boss and a promotion is coming up, perhaps. So there's situations that's very difficult, sometimes not even wise to set boundaries. So we want to be aware of that. Outside of those situations, I think a lot of times it's hard for people to set boundaries because they're not connected with their self-worth. Because if we're connected with our self-worth, the worth that we were born with, the essence that we were born with, we would be able to express ourselves and ask for what we need. But a lot of times that true essence, when there's trauma and loss and grief and all that stuff, self-doubt, anxiety, all of that, kind of like they take over. So the true self is not present like it needs to be. And so when that happens, it's very hard to, when you don't have access to your true self, it's very hard to set clear boundaries. I hope that makes sense.
That
Yeah.
makes perfect
No, it does.
sense. And this is why I suggest people to come see you so we could, kill that, negative mind and take care of the trauma in order to get self-esteem. Yeah.
Yes. Well, kind of maybe not kill it, but, get to know it. Get curious about it, because all those anxieties and, let's say, self-doubt, whatever it is that's showing up for you that is blocking your ability to connect with your self-worth, we need to look at it. We need to get curious about it, because they're there for a reason. Usually they're there to protect us from more pain. For example, isolation a lot of times is just for that reason, because we want to protect ourselves from more pain. So, or if there's anger, what is that anger about? Let's give it a voice. Let's figure out where it's coming from. So we want to honor and acknowledge and listen to all those unhelpful, let's say, or unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
And from there, the more we do that, the easier it is to eventually get to the true self. Because a lot of times these experiences, they're there to protect the part of us that's wounded.
So good. That was such a good answer. I learned so much from that. I'm like so into it.
I know.
Tell me more. So good.
No, that it resonates not just with people in the workplace, but with everybody.
Students, I mean, just life, right? How to accept things or not accept things and speak out for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, of course, there are tools that we also need to learn in terms of how to say no in a way that's assertive and not aggressive and not passive. You know, we want to learn proper way to do it. But before all of that, we have to recognize, oh, I do have the right to say no. Sometimes we don't even know that we have the right to say no.
So true. And that's in the workplace. Is that sometimes we take it in.
Or we have the right to ask for what we need, whether workplace or not. We forget.
No, it's true. I mean, me and Shannique, this isn't even a topic that we were, the story we were talking about earlier, but Shannique and I, when we first started working together, I was her assistant and I wanted to do such a good job. And I had such a people-pleasing place. And I wouldn't stay, you know, all the time I wanted to text Shannique, or we would text each other, like, but we had to eventually ask each other, like, hey, we need a boundary. Like, let's come into work with a note of what I was thinking, because I was very people pleasing in the fact that when she asked me something that was on her mind, like late at night or something, because I also want to be your friend, I wanted to fix it, or I went into problem solving in that moment and I couldn't separate. So we came up with a thing. I was like, I know it's on your brain right now and you don't want to forget it, but it makes me anxious and like I can't relax when I'm getting messages from you. So then we just were like, okay, in the morning, we're going to come in a little earlier and she's going to write down all of her thoughts and then go through it with me, and then perfect. And
That's great.
It really helped just our business and professional and our friendship.
Because you were very clear, it sounds like. You ended up being very clear as to what it is that you needed and what is it you didn't want to do.
Yeah, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
How are
I
you
was like,
supposed to know?
Cool. She texts me at like 12 in the morning. I ask a question. I'm like, oh, I have ideas. You know, especially at the time because she was running social media. And I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, girl, no. I'm like,
it took me a good amount of time to build the courage, because I didn't want to disappoint you. And I loved you and believed in you. Like, I wanted to do a good job. And I was excited and I didn't want to lose my opportunity to work with you and stuff like that. So it did take me a while though to build up that boundary.
So, that's when the true self showed itself, you know, the true essence of us. That's when you recognize I need to set some clear limits here or boundaries or have a plan around our contact time, you know, because our true self, the self, like the essence that we all have, is very clear. But when we have, and I used to also, I mean, I think many of us probably, not everyone maybe, but many of us have had that history of people pleasing, including myself.
I'm sure I rubbed off on her too, because I'm a big people pleaser as well.
And I don't know if it's like, I mean, that's like a whole nother thing. I don't know if it's just women.
I've seen it with men too. I think, well, part of it, especially with women, it's our culture, because, I mean, the culture of the society at large, because women, we're nurturing, so it's like really expected of us to be nurturing to the point that we forget that we have our own needs. Many times when people pleasing is even at a different level, many times is probably related to some sort of history of not feeling safe as a child or in a relationship as an adult, where we had to consciously or subconsciously please the other person in order to keep the calm, you know, and then that becomes a pattern of interacting with people, because we don't want to rock the boat. We want to be safe. It's not, we're not always aware of it, but it just becomes a habit.
That's so true. I mean, definitely.
How would someone break themselves out of that and start, like, if I realize, like, okay, I'm people pleasing, I because I don't feel safe, what are the next steps then?
Okay. So the next step, I mean, it's more than I could maybe say here.
Yeah.
But first is awareness that I'm realizing I'm doing that. I'm pleasing a lot of people. I'm not paying attention to my own needs, right? So first is awareness. And second, getting clear about what are my own needs. What is it that I need? And then if I could say something to this person, what would I say? And kind of like entertain the idea. If I could set limits, what would I say? How do I do it? When will I say it? Because sometimes, you have to be careful about the
Yes.
timing of what
Yeah.
we bring up. Or many
Yes.
times, I think it's better to choose a better timing to so that we have a better chance of getting what we want, right? Yeah, and
Yes.
really sometimes it's seeing a therapist or a coach is needed because maybe the wound is really deep. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers
No,
your
it
question.
definitely does.
I have a question. How to handle a situation.
Okay.
So there was a time that I give Dixie, one of my clients, because I felt like my scheduling didn't work well with her. Like every time she would ask for certain hours, I would say, well, I only have 30 minutes or I don't work that day. So I handed over this person to Dixie. And then one evening, she texts me at like 3 a.m. like, hey, does Dixie have any room? Can you get me in? And then she puts a wave emoji like, hello, answer me, answer me. Then she's calling me on my phone. Then she's continued to text me. And then she books on the website for Dixie. And then she texts me back saying, well, I thought you said you guys didn't have any more time. She thought I was lying. And I'm like, girl, it's 3 a.m. We're all sleeping. If you found, a slot, amazing.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that. But how would you handle that? How would you set boundaries for that?
Yeah. Well, that's hard, first of all, to get calls at 3 a.m. I mean, my goodness. That's not fun.
No, it's not fun.
No. Yeah, I think the first step would be for you ladies to have a very clear understanding of what time is appropriate for you for people to contact you.
Yes.
And so if you're clear about that, if it's written somewhere in your, I don't know, in your website or brochure or whatever you hand out to
Yeah.
people, so that you're very clear that these are the hours that I'm returning somebody's call. And then if they keep demanding that you respond to them 3 a.m., then you're clearly, not a good match for each other because they're not understanding the limits that you have very clearly set for them. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yes.
you could
Yes.
have you can start with having a conversation with them. We can always start with having a conversation.
Yes.
But it seems like this person is a little bit on the more unreasonable side. So I don't know how helpful a conversation would be, but you can always start with a conversation.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
That didn't work. Or she didn't.
She stopped for a little bit,
Yes.
and then it was like 11 o'clock at night. Like, can I have an appointment for and then I didn't answer right away, and it was like not even 2 minutes, and then a wave hand emoji, like hello, like I'm
here. I'm still waiting.
I'm like, and so I developed from all of that because I don't know tech, but I have like a copy and paste response that I keep in my notes. That's like, either I'm with a client right now and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, but I did get your message, because acknowledging that I did get it and I will. Or if it's late at night, then saying I will return this at 8 a.m., when I'm business hours. But it took me a while, and I still don't do it. I do it to the extent of somebody, who's continuing to do it. But how do you not feel guilty or like scared you're gonna make someone mad or
Lose them as a client.
or
yeah.
they're gonna write a bad Yelp review now, or how do you like?
I think first, I mean, you need to ask yourself, am I okay with answering somebody, even if it's just a copy and paste to say, I'm going to respond to you tomorrow. It's 11 p.m. So do you feel comfortable to even do that at 11 p.m.? I mean, that's the question to ask, and also of yourself. Also, I had another thought that came and went, but anyway. Yeah, I was going to say, are you able to, for all of us, to sit with that feeling of, it's 11 p.m., they just send me a text and I'm not responding. Can I sit with that? That sometimes is hard to do, especially if you're not used to setting limits. It's very hard to do, but kind of like practicing practicing that I've already made that very clear that I don't respond at 11 p.m. and it's okay not to respond at 11. Even if it is to say, I'm acknowledging your text, it doesn't even have to be done. If it's already made clear somewhere on a website that I do not respond to messages at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And give me your question again. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Just the feeling of guilt.
Oh,
Yes,
guilt.
Yeah, like
Yes.
the fear, the guilt, the anxiety that comes with
Yes.
putting down your foot.
Yes.
Yes. And that, again, that's very common for women to experience guilt. And so it's important that we're aware that there are two types of guilt. There's guilt that is justified and guilt that is not. So guilt that is justified is, you have certain values, you have certain morals, and then you do something against your values or against your morals, and then you feel guilty about it. So that's very healthy. That actually means you have a conscience. And so because you recognize that what you just did is not according to your own values, then you likely, if you can, you would do something to repair the situation. So it's good to feel, it's healthy to feel that type of a guilt. That's a sign of a healthy person.
It's good to know.
Definitely, definitely. So then, like, for example, let's say you make a promise to do something for someone and then you can't do it. And then you might feel guilty for a little bit because I could have done it, but I didn't do it. I went back on my word. I didn't try hard enough to make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay, that's because, you have a conscience. However, sometimes we overdo all of that, or we just feel guilty about something that we have nothing to feel guilty about.
Right. Yeah. It's just all in our
Yeah.
head. Or maybe we're possibly stuck in the past,
Either
and we
that-
can't break it,
Yeah, or maybe unreasonable expectations of ourselves. So just because we feel guilty, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are. So when we feel guilty, we pause for a moment. What am I feeling guilty about? What is it that I said or I did or didn't do? So we want to evaluate for a moment. What is happening for me to feel guilty? And then if you don't come up with anything that you have done wrong, then we know, okay, so this guilty feeling is not really justified. If I don't answer the text 11 p.m. when I already said I do not respond to text after 6 p.m., I have nothing to feel guilty about because I've already been very clear. So then there's no need for me to feel. So it's kind of like checking in with ourselves because if we're used to that people pleasing especially, then of course we feel guilty when we don't please people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I think I found my HR person. Salon psychiatrist. Like, we're going to work things out today, ladies. Or she's going to sit in the corner and just watch how people react to their clients and how to say no.
That's so funny.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Well, speaking of talking to clients, I have trouble, and I actually just had it happen today. And I told Shannique about it, and she's like, "Me too."
Yes.
Was when you're on your schedule and you have everything planned, but then they keep talking. And I love talking to my clients. I love my clients. It's great. But we just spent an hour talking, and I have somebody else next, like on the schedule, their appointment that they booked, and I'm ready.
Yeah.
But how do you get them out the door? In a nice way, to just be like, because sometimes I've been like, oh, my next client's here.
Yeah.
And they still keep going.
And we're not talking about like 2 minutes. We're
Yes.
talking 15 to 30 minutes. And we're just standing there, kind of like, we have to go.
Yes, that's hard.
That's hard.
Yeah, as a therapist and a coach, occasionally I come across clients also that have a hard time letting go. They want to continue. So that happens occasionally. So I think many business owners probably relate to that.
Yes.
I think what I would do, first of all, I'll make sure that I have a clock that's facing me and that there's a clock that they're looking at so that everybody is aware of the time. And usually in those situations, if you notice that it's a pattern with this particular client, I think it's a good idea to address the pattern, not just that one session that is happening, but just talk about the pattern so you don't have to have the same conversation over and over again. So you're letting them know that I'm noticing that it's hard for us to say goodbye toward the end. And let's come up with a plan so we can end on time. And so maybe you yourself can say, from here on, if, I'm thinking of letting you know 5 minutes in advance, like, if we meet at 1 p.m., then around 1:55, I'll remind you that we have 5 more minutes. And then at 1:58, I'm going to again remind you that we need to wrap up and leave, because I don't want to make my next client wait, because it's not fair to them to wait when they're on time.
That's right.
And so how do you feel about saying that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And then I think you mentioned too before, doing maybe the pre-booking with those clients in the beginning of the appointment.
Oh, yes. Because sometimes that can take a while.
Yes.
Because if they're not able to be concise in how they speak, that might take a long time.
Yeah.
So definitely that can be a good idea too, if that works for your business. I don't know if it works for every business, but when you have that type of client, you can definitely do that at the beginning of the session.
Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, just being honest with them.
It's just being honest.
Honest and respectful, really.
Yeah.
It's about being honest and respectful toward your own needs and their needs. And of course, the needs of the next client who's waiting in the waiting room. So what can we say that honors everyone involved?
Yes, and I could share real quick that one of my clients that always, is a little late, and then she leaves late and kind of lingers. Last week, I gave her a 15-minute, okay, I'm going to show you your lashes. I stopped 15 minutes before her session ended. Gave her the mirror. She looked. We fixed whatever. And then she started talking. I checked her out. We booked the appointment, and then it started turning into more conversation. And I think it was out of my body or something. But I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I need to stop you right here, because I have, Joanne waiting in the room, and I know that she has a baby to pick up soon. So I'm going to have to end it right now. Yeah. And she looked at me like,
yeah, okay.
And I was like, oh my God, I did it.
Yes.
I did. It was like an out of body experience. How long did that take me? Years.
It takes practice.
It takes practice. It does.
Really, saying no takes a lot of practice and a lot of self-compassion. Especially if we're not used to saying no or asking for what we want, we need to be patient with ourselves. Yeah.
Boy, was I patient. A little too patient.
Yes. Probably. Yeah. But good for you, by the way, for doing that. And when we have a conversation in advance, when we notice, as soon as we notice a pattern, if we address it as a pattern, then resentment doesn't build up, because resentment can be very difficult to handle.
It is.
It ruins relationships,
Yeah,
it really does. So we don't want resentment to build up at all. That's why we want to address it as soon as we can.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, this will definitely help so many people out there. My girls definitely will be tuning in. And one of them is really excited to listen to this week's episode. So I'm really excited to share this with her.
I'm so happy.
I'm excited to take this back with me, and just it's like a good reminder that you can say no. And I think that's so Say No with Grace. That's your online course, or
let's talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for asking about that. So Say No with Grace used to be a workshop. I did it live in person, also did it online, and also it's a subject that I covered when I used to run a lot of groups. I used to design and run a lot of groups, and when I used to work in a women's clinic, I was there for 9 years. And no matter what type of group I did, I always brought in this conversation, because I noticed working in women's clinic that this topic came up all the time. Our lack of ability, and myself in the past as well, to say no and to ask for what we want and to set those limits. And so I've done this like a zillion times, and eventually I thought, because people were asking about it so much, to just put it in an audio form, and it kind of like, I call it a secret podcast. So it's on my website, and if you go on there, or on my Instagram as well, my website is powertotheself.com. And my Instagram also, if you look for Power to the Self, you'll find it. And it's in my bio. And it's also, like I said, on my website, look for Secret Podcast and you'll find it. And so this is where I teach how you say no. First of all, you'll learn about your communication style, because there are different communication styles that we all use, and we're not aware of them, but we talk a certain way and interact with people in a certain way. So you will learn about different styles, and you'll also learn about your belief about yourself behind these communication styles that you use. And then we go into step by step of my say no method. And so you know exactly how to say no.
Yes.
Oh,
I listened
definitely.
to that, and it was so great. Everything was just perfect, worded perfectly and easy to understand. And you really start to think, about you basically the courage to change the way that you feel or think.
Yes.
And you feel better when you address the issue.
Thank you first of all, thanks for listening. And also thank you for saying that, because a lot of times we forget that we can change our ways. We just say, well, this is how I am. And then we resign just to whatever that is. This is how I am, And there's always a way to improve ourselves. And
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's all you, girl.
I'm excited to listen to that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, especially the title is what really say no with grace, because that was always my thing. Is like no is like a
It's such a strong word.
mean and bad word,
Yes.
and it's like no, you can say no, and it's okay. One, giving permission to say no, and then also how to express it without feeling like you're being mean or rude or
Right.
Or aggressive.
Yeah.
Many think that if I say no, I'm
Aggressive.
being aggressive.
Yes.
And that's not true at all. That's what we talk about on this secret podcast is how to say no in a way that's respectful to you and the other person.
I love that.
And I think that's how I felt at that moment, telling that client, okay, we need to move on.
Yes.
I felt better about it. I didn't feel guilty, which is weird. I didn't feel like I was hurting her. And she understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, she, goodbye.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, okay.
Yes.
She was happy. I was happy.
Yeah, good for you.
And it all worked out. And I think sometimes we get stuck, we create visions in our head that are not even, a possibility that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many times that's the case. Sometimes there might be a consequence. The person, maybe they will feel offended, even though we said it nicely to them. So, we always need to prepare for that possibility as well. And just know that even if they get upset, I recognize that I'm clear that I was respectful. So I'm not responsible for how they're reacting to it. If I'm clear that I was respectful, whatever they're interpreting that interaction as, it's really, I can offer them more if they would like, but really ultimately it's not on me to make them feel better because I said it with grace and with respect. And, so there's always those situations as well, which we talk about on the podcast too.
Yay.
And
I love that. I love it all.
Yeah.
I'm excited to listen.
I feel like I'm growing already.
We're all growing every day.
We're all growing every
Especially
day.
as business owners. It's so important. I mean, I'm sure you've all noticed and your audience has noticed, as business owners, our business really is a reflection of our own growth. So the more we grow on the inside, the more the business will grow, because growing to the next level, it means that the different version of us needs to show up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we have to really reconnect with that self-worth and keep doing the growth work so that we can expand our business. It's not possible to grow a business without growing the self on the inside, I don't think.
No.
No, because
Yeah. Yeah.
I have another topic for next time that we can talk about. But
Yes.
I know.
Oh
I'm
my
like, we
goodness.
could talk for hours.
we can talk for hours. Yes, especially with
this
this
is fun.
Yes.
knowledgeable.
Well, we'll have
you
to
know,
have you on again.
Good.
I would
Ruth.
love that. That would
Yes.
be my honor. Thank you, ladies, for this.
well,
for this
thank
interview.
you.
You're both so lovely and easy to talk to and listen to. And
Same.
so thank you both for the fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And
Okay.
so remind us where we can find you.
Yes, thank you. Powertotheself.com is my website. And on Instagram, look for Power to the Self with dots in between the words.
Right.
Perfect.
And let's learn how to say no with grace.
No.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, you can find us on Apple,
Spotify, YouTube,
Instagram,
Not Just Lashes podcast,
TikTok.
TikTok.
Don't forget
I'm
about
still
TikTok.
doing it.
Good. Good for you.
All right.
All right. See you next time.
Yeah. Bye.